In the modern world, we are surrounded by technology, science, and achievements unlike anything humanity has ever witnessed before. We can communicate with someone on the other side of the planet in seconds, explore galaxies millions of light years away, and unravel mysteries of nature that our ancestors could scarcely imagine. Yet a strange paradox remains. The more we seem to understand the external world, the more disconnected many people feel from their own existence. Many people wake up each morning with a sense of emptiness they cannot quite explain. They work, study, pursue goals, and strive for success, yet deep within them lingers a silent question: what is the point of all this? This is precisely the question that Alan Watts spent much of his life exploring. According to Watts, one of the greatest consequences of the modern worldview is a profound feeling of isolation. People are often taught to see themselves as separate individuals living in an immense and indifferent universe. We look up at the stars and imagine that we are merely tiny creatures who appeared by accident on an insignificant planet. From that perspective, life easily becomes a constant struggle to prove our worth. We feel compelled to achieve more, own more, and become more important because deep down we fear that without those accomplishments, our existence might be meaningless. Alan Watts believed that this way of thinking creates an imaginary distance between human beings and the universe. He once said, "Through our eyes, the universe is perceiving itself. Through our ears, the universe is listening to its harmonies." This remarkable statement presents a completely different perspective from the one many people hold today. Instead of viewing human beings as separate entities standing apart from the world, Watts suggested that we are inseparable expressions of the universe itself. Imagine a wave in the ocean. If that wave possessed consciousness, it might believe that it is an independent being. It has its own shape, its own height, and its own lifespan. It sees other waves as separate objects existing outside of itself. But in reality, the wave has never been separate from the ocean. It emerges from the ocean, exists because of the ocean, and eventually returns to the ocean. Its entire existence is simply a temporary expression of something much larger. According to Alan Watts, human beings are much the same. We tend to think of ourselves as isolated individuals confronting the world. Yet in truth, we are part of the world itself. We did not come into nature from somewhere else. We arose from nature, just as trees grow from the earth and waves arise from the sea. Watts expressed this idea beautifully when he said, "You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself." If we reflect deeply on this idea, our understanding of life begins to change. When we believe we are separate from the world, we live in a constant state of defense. We feel the need to compete for survival. We try to control everything around us in order to feel secure. We accumulate possessions, achievements, and status in an attempt to reduce our fear of the future. But when we realize that we are part of a much larger whole, many of those anxieties begin to fade. This does not mean that difficulties disappear. Life will always contain challenges, losses, uncertainty, and change. However, the deep-rooted sense of loneliness that often defines the human experience becomes less overwhelming. One reason modern people suffer so much is that we constantly resist the natural flow of life. We want everything to happen according to our plans. We want certainty about the future. We want complete control over events. Yet the harder we try to control life, the more anxious we often become. Alan Watts frequently emphasized that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. When we treat life like a problem, we convince ourselves that happiness exists somewhere in the future. We believe that once we achieve a certain goal, earn enough money, or complete all our plans, we will finally be at peace. But that moment rarely arrives. As soon as one goal is achieved, another appears. We continue running toward the future without realizing that we are neglecting the present moment. Watts believed this is one of humanity's greatest illusions. We live as though life were a race, when in fact it is much more like music. When listening to a piece of music, the goal is not to reach the final note as quickly as possible. If that were true, the shortest songs would be the greatest. The beauty of music lies in experiencing each note, each rhythm, and each melody as it unfolds. Life is no different. Its meaning is not found solely at the destination, but within every moment of the journey itself. Yet our sense of separation causes us to forget this truth. We view nature as a resource to exploit. We view other people as competitors to overcome. Sometimes we even treat our own bodies as machines that must be controlled and forced into submission. The result is a life of chronic tension. Modern human beings possess more comfort, convenience, and technological power than any generation before them. Yet many also experience unprecedented levels of anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction. According to Alan Watts, the deeper cause is not merely economic pressure or social expectations. It lies in how we understand ourselves. If we believe that we are isolated individuals struggling against an external world, life will always feel like a battle. But if we realize that we belong to this world, that we are expressions of the same process unfolding throughout the universe, then our experience of life begins to transform. The sky is no longer something foreign above us. Nature is no longer an object outside of ourselves. The people around us are no longer entirely separate from who we are. Everything is connected within a vast web of existence. This is not necessarily a religious belief or a mystical doctrine. It is another way of seeing reality. A perspective that can help us overcome loneliness and rediscover our connection to the world we have always belonged to. Perhaps the most important message Alan Watts wished to convey was not that we should adopt a new belief system. Rather, he encouraged us to question the assumptions we have unconsciously accepted for most of our lives. Are we truly separate from the universe? Or is that feeling of separation simply a story created by the mind? The moment we begin asking that question, a new doorway opens. And perhaps for the first time in many years, we begin to sense that we are not strangers wandering through a vast and indifferent cosmos. We have always been part of it. And perhaps the universe itself is experiencing its own existence through every breath we take, every thought we think, and every moment we live. In the next part of this series, we will explore one of Alan Watts' most fascinating and provocative ideas. Why he believed that the fixed and separate self we cling to is largely an illusion, and what happens when we begin to see beyond it. Join us in Part 4, where we will dive deeper into the mysteries of identity, consciousness, and the true nature of who we are. You may discover that the answer changes the way you see yourself and the universe forever.